Hello everyone, back tuning into today's first video. So doing JMA Friday for today's first video. It's going to take us through the next month with Japanese and CFS V2 models. It's going to get us into the middle of December. So we'll be running into the early part of winter with this update and be coming just short of Christmas. So you'll see what the JMA and the CFS V2 long-range season models have got to say about weather for next month very shortly. Just to say that we've got 3 videos coming up today. So today's second video, later on this afternoon, we'll have a look at the weather for next week to 10 days. All of the latest news and information on next week's cold weather, next week's cold spell. And then this evening, again, we've got another Christmas update. They're getting more regular now. So I think we're up to update number 6 for Christmas, and that will be with you this evening. But starting us all off today is JMA Friday, so we're going to have a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts of the Japanese model first of all, looking at the North Pole view down. So this, what you're looking at just here is the North Pole of the Northern Hemisphere, and I'm just going to get the highlighter set up. So there we go, we're all ready now. So North Pole of the Northern Hemisphere is just there, mid latitudes of the Northern Hemisphere around there. 500 millibars is an area in the actual high pressure, low pressure being moved around by the jet stream. So yellow, orange and red is extrapolating to high pressure and blue to low pressure. You can see it in the week ahead. These are broken down into week periods. So the first week period takes us from the 16th through to the 23rd of November. You see we've got a big area of above average heights over and to the north of the country, with below average heights to our south down here. So the jet stream is on a southerly track and would be moving cold air around the side of this ridge in that sort of direction. So anticyclonic and increasingly cold with easterly winds in the week ahead. Then we move through to week 2. It takes us from the 23rd through to the 30th of November. And this one again with below average heights to our south. And then we've also got a large area of above average heights retrogressing from Scandinavia over towards Greenland and Iceland. And again, it's going to be pulling the wind in from an east or northeast direction. So that one cold and potentially wintry as we go through into the final week of November. You could definitely anticipate some snow coming through with that one, I would have thought, as the air is being drawn out of the North Pole and then around this ridge like that. That does look cold and wintry for week 2. And then we move through to weeks 3 and 4. It takes us from the 30th of November through to the 16th of December. And this one is a bit different because we have above average heights then centering over top of the UK and Western Europe. Below average heights in the middle of the Atlantic just there, and also away to the northeast. So just very quiet, very anticyclonic weather for weeks 3 and 4. Now remember, this is a 2-weekly anomaly, so it might be a bit transitional. It may be that week 3, for example, it's still quite cold and blocked, and then week 4 turns more unsettled and milder, and so the anomaly you would get out of those 2 weeks would probably be one of an anticyclone sitting over top of the UK. So it's always difficult to interpret a 2-weekly sort of anomaly. Always a little bit more difficult to do that than a 1-weekly anomaly. But overall, it does look as though it's more settled and probably anticyclonic, dry and cold for the 2 weeks as a whole. So this is the tropical and mid-latitude view next. We've got the British Isles just here in the top right-hand corner of the chart as you're looking at. Again, reminder of a week 1 500 millibar height anomaly, which is taking us from the 16th to the 23rd of November. We have the above average heights through the UK, but also going up to the northeast as well. So bringing in those easterly winds. If you come over to this side of the chart, you can see how those easterly winds will be pushing in across much of Central and Northern Europe in the week ahead. Temperature anomalies are forecast to be colder than average in most parts of the UK in the week ahead. Most parts of Europe also being forecast to have a colder than average week. It also looks very cold over in the east and northeast of America. So a cold week coming up in the week ahead, but also dry with high pressure dominating. We have drier than average precipitation forecast. So cold and dry in the week ahead. Then we go through to week 2. It's the 23rd to the 30th of November with that very strong blocking signal out to the north and to the northwest as well. Low pressure is down here with that southerly tracking jet stream, potentially bringing in the wind from an east or northeasterly direction. The temperature anomaly is very substantially colder than average for this final week of November. We're talking about anomalies around 3 to 4 degrees below average here for the UK and for all parts of Europe as well. Very, very cold end to November. There, and the precipitation anomaly still on the drier than average side, but not as dry as it is in week 1, telling us there's a little bit more precipitation around, and of course with such cold temperature anomalies, most of that could be sleet or snow. Then weeks 3 and 4 look like this. It's the 30th of November to the 16th of December with the above average heights then over top of the UK. So it looks rather more anti-cyclonic. Temperature anomalies are lifting back up. So we're losing those extensively colder than average temperature anomalies and returning to average or possibly even a little bit milder than average. Although most parts of Europe still looking really quite cold with their temperature anomaly through these first 2 weeks of December, and a little bit more unsettled as well, which is a bit of a surprise given that the 500 millibar heights is placing a ridge over top of the UK. I can only assume that again it's transitional, so maybe it's seeing some very wet weather in one of those 2 weeks, possibly or most likely week 4. So perhaps something like after the blocking that we get in week 2, the high pressure collapses across the UK in week 3. That would be the first week of December. And then the high pressure perhaps collapses further into southeast parts of Europe through weeks 4, unleashing the Atlantic, and so we go into a very wet, windy and unsettled spell for week 4, and so overall the temperature anomaly for the 2 weeks of precipitation anomaly, I should say, for the 2 weeks comes out wetter than average. But it is a little bit confusing there what the JMA is doing in weeks 3 and 4, because it is quite a strong signal for an area of above average heights to be centred over top of the UK, really. So you would expect it to be quite dry. But there we go. That's what the JMA is showing for weeks 3 and 4. Let's see how this compares to CFS V2. So again, these are 500 millibar heights broken down into week periods. The first week period will take us from the 16th to the 22nd of November. Strong blocking signal to the north and the northeast of the UK, and then we've got the below average heights out to west just here. And that means that we're bringing in these cold easterly winds, doing something like that with the flow and with the jet stream. So you expect this to be quite a dry, but also cold week 1, and very much in line with what the JMA is showing. Week 2 is the 23rd to 29th of November. The above average heights are high pressure for blocking, moving more to be centred close to Greenland. So very blocked between Greenland and Scandinavia. Really below average heights, low pressure down here. So this is a colder week, very much in line with what the JMA is showing. If you follow where the air would be coming from, the air would be coming from sort of the Arctic, Siberia, moving down across Europe. With low pressure down to the southwest, there's energy there and moisture to potentially be producing sleet or snow with those cold east to northeasterly winds. Week 3 looks like this. It's the 30th of November to the 6th of December, still with a very strong blocking signal around Greenland. Proper southerly tracking jet stream here with low pressure to our south. The jet stream is going to be down there somewhere and then moving in that kind of direction. Again, this is cold. We'd be bringing the wind in from an east or northeasterly direction. So CFS this morning is implying quite a prolonged cold spell. 2 weeks, 3 weeks of cold weather, 2 weeks. Weeks 2 and 3 are potentially very cold and maybe wintry conditions. Week 4 takes us from the 7th to the 13th of December, still with that blocking signal to the north, though it is weakening. Below average height still out to south or southwest. I think this is possibly turning a little bit milder then. We've possibly started to move the air up more from a southerly, southwesterly direction. This blocking signal just weakening for a while. So that possibly implying, as we move towards the middle of December, it starts to turn more unsettled, and it possibly starts to turn a little bit milder as well. But certainly weeks 1, 2 and 3 are looking quite cold. So temperature anomalies are looking like this, taking us from the 16th through 22nd of December. Now, northern parts of the country are being forecast to have above average temperatures in this week, with much of Europe looking cold. I think that's a bit over the top. Remember, what's happening here is that we're starting off very mild at the moment. It's going to cool down over the weekend. It's not until next week, around Monday, Tuesday, that the properly cold air will start to move in. Having said that, I think even considering this is transitioning from mild or very mild to colder, I think above average temperature anomalies to the north is a little bit over top. I would expect that to be nearer norm. But essentially, this first week is a transitional week that's turning colder. Then we go through to week 2. Forecast to be colder than average for much of the UK, colder than average for most parts of Europe as well. Week 3 looks like that. It's still coming out colder than average for the UK. Again, most parts of Europe also forecast to be colder than average in week 3 from the 30th of November to 6th of December. Then we get through to week 4. We just start to lose those colder than average temperature anomalies. So, I mean, we're only around average, but beginning to get a little bit milder there, I think, from the 7th through to the 13th of December. Precipitation-wise, the week ahead is colder than average. It's drier than average, I should say, from the 16th to the 22nd of November. And then week 2 is also drier than average, with a strong anti-cyclonic signal, a northern blocking signal, leading to drier than average conditions. Week 3 is close to average, wetter than average down to our south, you'll notice, drier than average out to the northwest. That's the one that could be the most wintry from the CFS. I think the 30th of November to 6th of December, first week of December, could bring some quite significant snow there if the CFS is right. And then week 4, the 7th to the 13th of December, if anything, we're just starting to move towards more unsettled conditions, so hinting at being a bit above average with rainfall there. And potentially, of course, initially, some of that could be wintry, some of it could be snow, and then as the mild air breaks through, starting to turn more towards rain. So it's a wintry JMA Friday this week. Both the models are signalling blocking and cold weather for the rest of November and into the start of December as well. Possibly hints of something a bit milder happening as we move towards the middle part of November, week 4. But of course, that's a very, very long way off. And the models will always try to get us back into that westerly Atlantic flow. So we will really have to wait and see on that. I think the main takeaway from this week's JMA Friday is increasingly cold through to the end of November. Most cold and potentially quite wintry conditions with snow lasting into at least the early days of December, for maybe something milder and more sort of towards rain comes along by the time you get through to the middle of December. All to be revealed, of course. These models are highly experimental. They're prone to chopping and changing, so none of this can be relied upon. Come back this afternoon when we're going to have a detailed look at the weather for next week, 10 days. We've got cold weather setting in, and we'll bring you up to date with all of the latest developments on that. So come back this afternoon, and then tonight we've got your 6th Christmas update. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.